Despite having no formal education and a pretty serious criminal record dating back to the Prohibition era, legendary mob boss and casino owner Benny Binion had a tremendous impact on the history and development of Las Vegas, Nevada. A mass of contradictions, Binion was known as a nice guy, but also a dangerous and even deadly foe when crossed. Today, we're looking back on the strange life of gambling icon Benny Binion, the friendliest mobster in Las Vegas. But before we get started, why not subscribe to the Weird History channel? After that, we'd be much obliged if you'd leave a comment letting us know what other high-stakes figures you would like to hear about. Okay, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, sometimes 6 feet underground in Vegas. Lester Ben Binion, who'd later go by Benny, was born in 1904 and grew up in the Dallas suburb of Pilot Grove, Texas. He'd keep in touch with his Texas roots all his life, famously wearing cowboy shirts and hats nearly every day, and even walking around the streets of Vegas armed with a pistol. You know, back when that was unusual. Binion was often sick as a child, and his parents assumed he likely wouldn't live into adulthood, so education was not their top priority. By his own account, he never progressed in school beyond the 2nd grade. But his health gradually improved around age 10, and young Benny began to go on business trips with his father, who was a horse trader. They probably were not the most exciting trips, unless they trade horses the same way they pick contestants on American Gladiators. These trips were the beginning of Binion's education in gambling, as cards and other games of chance were a popular pastime among traders, farmers, and merchants during downtime at county fairs and trade shows. He also occasionally would take side gigs as a mule dealer, which apparently trained young Benny in the art of deal-making and salesmanship, and slinging mules, although that particular skill was less useful for his career in the mob. Binion's criminal career started at around age 18, when he moved to El Paso and started working for a Prohibition-era moonshine racket. It was a solid entry-level crime gig. At first, he had minor responsibilities, like spreading gravel, which is apparently something you still have to do, even when you join the mob. But thanks to his cleverness and bravado, he gradually moved up in the organization. Underworld legend has it that he once stole an entire stash of booze from a police evidence vault by getting the cops drunk and having a spare copy of their keys made. Whether or not things actually went down that way, that's a pretty good story. They probably whipped that one out during recruitment drives. The mob does job fairs, right? By 1928, Binion's notoriety in the criminal world was on the rise. He was still moving moonshine on the side, but had also started up his own small-time illegal gambling operation by running a local numbers game. A man named Warren Diamond, a well-known figure in illegal gambling in Dallas, took Binion under his wing and taught him not just about running numbers, but what to do with his earnings and how to carry himself in public. If Binion's later persona was any indication, Diamond's advice on how to carry oneself in public was like an armed cowboy. More on that in a second. When Diamond passed away in 1933, Binion stepped in as his successor. Around that time, Binion came into conflict with Frank Bolding, the manager of a rival bootlegging operation, which is another way of saying that Binion blasted him into the next world. As Binion initially recalled the incident, the two men sat down for dinner to hash out their differences, but started arguing. Bolding then jumped out of his seat and brandished a knife, prompting Binion to pull out his pistol and fire. Binion later admitted this version wasn't true, and his rival never actually held a knife. That's a pretty major detail, Benny. Nonetheless, he maintained for the rest of his life that he had feared for his safety and shot Bolding in self-defense. He was convicted of the slaying but received just a 2-year suspended sentence. As a more long-term consequence of the shooting, his quick-draw skills earned Binion the nickname The Cowboy. As you might expect with any mob guy called The Cowboy, this was not the only untimely demise with which Binion was directly involved. On September 12, 1936, he got into a territorial skirmish with a game operator in Dallas named Ben Frieden. According to a report in the Dallas Times-Herald, Binion and an associate named H.E. Buddy Malone fatally shot Frieden. Listen, who among us hasn't been in a gunfight with a man named He Buddy? During the conflict, Binion allegedly also shot himself in the shoulder, allowing him to later claim that Frieden had been armed and he was acting in self-defense. Regardless of who really put the bullet in Binion's shoulder, he was successful in convincing a court that he had taken out Frieden in self-defense. So both Binion and his buddy walked away scot-free. Binion also had bad blood with another Dallas gambler by the name of Herbert the Cat Noble. Man, some really great nicknames all around. Originally, Noble served as a bodyguard for another gambler named Sam Murray, who was ultimately whacked by another associate of both men. That happens a lot in the mob. After the whacking, Noble took over Murray's business and was supposed to continue paying Binion a cut of their profits. Instead, Noble pulled another tried-and-true underworld move and double-crossed Binion. He recruited one of Binion's own lieutenants, Raymond Laudermilk, to come work for him instead and help scale up his operation. The duo went in together on a new venture called the Airmen's Club. Binion was not thrilled with the new competition and allegedly demanded that Laudermilk and Noble begin turning over 40% of their profits to him, roughly twice the payment he normally took. When they told him to get bent, Binion reportedly started making attempts on Noble's life, including one incident that led to a daring high-speed chase which landed Noble in the hospital. By some accounts, Binion tried to have Herbert Noble whacked on 11 separate occasions. Look, he was really upset about being left out of the Airmen's Club. The attempts on Noble's life were so intense that his wife was accidentally taken out by a car bomb in 1949 that was intended for him. Noble's ticket was finally punched in 1951 by an exploding mailbox, of all things. Despite his, let's call it, enthusiasm for violence, Benny Binion was also taking some more practical steps to grow his business. In 1936, he started hosting private dice games at hotels around the Dallas area, including the Southland Hotel in downtown Dallas, which came to serve as his headquarters. The 8-story building featured a coffee shop where he could hold court, bellhops and other staffers who could serve as runners, mules, and personal assistants, and of course, ample rooms which could support a growing prostitution ring. Collectively, the entire operation came to be known as the Southland Syndicate. By the 1940s, Binion was unquestionably one of the top criminals in Dallas, running numbers games and illegal casinos through his own network of bookies around the city, and even serving as the personal gambling coordinator for wealthy Texans like Howard Hughes and oil magnate H.L. Hunt. As World War II raged overseas, Binion's focus was entirely domestic. He wanted to expand his organization from Dallas into Fort Worth. A combination of factors, including the loss of political connections in the local government and encroachment on his territory by the Chicago outfit, ultimately drove Binion out of Texas entirely. In 1946, he left his home state and moved to Las Vegas. Upon arriving in the desert, Binion invested in a few casinos and opened one of his own, the Westerner Gambling House and Saloon. But none of his early projects ever paid off. He frequently ran into licensing problems and conflicts with his partners and co-investors. In fairness, it seems like he may have been difficult to work with. In 1951, Binion purchased Vegas's El Dorado Club and Apache Hotel, renaming them Binion's Horseshoe and bringing in a lot of foot traffic by allowing extremely high limits on bets. His initial table limit for craps was $500, which was pretty high stakes back then. That was like super yacht money.
Snake eyes! Snake eyes?
Oh no! I'm ruined!
For a time, the Horseshoe's policy was to essentially allow bets of any size, so long as your subsequent bets weren't larger than your initial wager.
Put it on black!
It's red.
Eventually, other casinos were forced to increase their own table limits in order to keep up with Binion. The Cowboy was behind a number of other innovations that have become commonplace and even expected when visiting Las Vegas today. He was the first casino in downtown Vegas to replace old-fashioned sawdust floors with classier carpeting. He's also credited with the idea of offering limo rides and comps drinks to players in order to encourage them to spend more time at the tables. While skipping on showgirls and other gaudy touches favored by his competitors, Binion was generous with his players, offering benefits like $2 stake specials and promotional stunts like 100 times odds craps games. The strategy paid off and made the Horseshoe one of the most profitable casinos in Vegas. Personally, however, Binion suffered a number of setbacks. Within 1 year of opening the Horseshoe, he was convicted of tax evasion and was ultimately sentenced to 5 years at the Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. To help cover his legal fees and back taxes, Binion was forced to sell a majority share of the casino to a fellow Texan, oil baron Joe W. Brown. He didn't regain full control of the Horseshoe until 1964. In the years after Binion retook control of the Horseshoe, it became ground zero for one of Las Vegas's signature events, the World Series of Poker. You know, the thing Chili shows on ESPN when nothing else is on. The event was originally known as the Texas Gamblers Reunion, which was started in Reno by Bill and LaFane Moore. After putting together the events for a few years, the Moors turned the tradition over to Binion. Binion renamed the event the World Series of Poker and opened it up to amateur gamblers and members of the public rather than just close friends and insiders.
194 players paid $10,000 each to enter this competition.
By 1973, CBS Sports was airing the games on television. In 1991, the World Series of Poker awarded its first $1 million prize. Binion was also instrumental in moving the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo to Las Vegas in 1985. Despite never professionally riding a horse in his entire life, he was introduced into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame for his efforts. Not bad, cowboy. Binion was never legally able to hold a gaming license in Nevada following his tax crimes in the 1950s, so his son Jack ran the company as casino president. Binion's sons continued to serve as the face of the Horseshoe throughout the 1970s and 80s, along with their mother, Teddy Jane, who often worked in the cashier's cage. In 2004, the Horseshoe was seized by federal agents for failing to keep up with union dues and benefits. Come on, it was always going to end this way. It was ultimately sold to Harrah's Entertainment, which later sold it again to a company named TLC Casino Enterprises, which also owns the nearby Four Queens. The World Series of Poker is still played there to this day.
And I am stoked!
Binion succumbed to heart failure on Christmas Day 1989 at the age of 85. He was introduced into the Poker Hall of Fame the following year. The man is in a surprising number of those. So what do you think? Was Benny the Cowboy Binion the friendliest mobster in Vegas, or just a mobster? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.